Okay, welcome to our latest edition of BizTech Twist. This is Bob Coppedge, Crotchety Old Geek, CEO of Simplex-IT, and I'm joined not by one, but by two guests. First of all, we have Kevin Dutkiewicz, who's actually the tech director here at Simplex-IT. Hi, Kevin.
Hi.
Yay. And then we also have Rob Rae, who is now the CVP for Communities and Ecosystems over at Pax8 and a legend in his own mind and the managed service industry. Hey, Rob, how you doing?
Awesome. Thank you.
Yay. And what we wanted to talk about today, and again, this is going to be we're going to talk about a particular topic, but we're going to try to come up with a slightly different perspective. And actually, Rob and I were talking in Florida at a conference a month or so ago, and we started talking about conferences, professional conferences, industry events, whatever you want to call them, and some do's and don'ts. And we both were talking about hilarious stories or things that we've seen, but also the lessons that we get from, don't be that person. Don't do those things. And we thought that would be an interesting and somewhat entertaining topic to do. And talked to Kevin, and he was immediately started talking about stories that I think he was talking about himself, honestly, but can't say that for sure. So that's pretty much our topic, and that's pretty much where we're going to go. And Kevin, you wanted to start it off, I think.
Yeah, say the thing I'm learning most planning MSP GeekCon is the just amount of little things you have to take into consideration when it comes to vendors, dealing with attendees, dealing with the organizers, dealing with the community, there's just so many little pieces. It's not drama per se, but it's just little things you have to be mindful of. And it's like, why should I have to care about that? And then at the end of the day, it's like, fine, it's a thing, and I'll just work with it. So it's like we're inviting vendors, but we're not inviting vendors to, we're inviting sponsors, obviously. They're going to come as their vendor ticket. But if a vendor who is not a sponsor wants to show up, we're not letting them. But if they're a vendor who also runs an MSP, they can show up as an MSP, but as long as they don't try and sell their stuff. And it's just little things like that we're trying to keep straight. And it's like, I don't know who all these people are. So yeah, I can let them in. I can't let them in. Just someone tell me what I'm supposed to do.
Wait till you've got a vendor that is also an MSP that is not sponsoring the event, but is a competitor for a vendor that is paying for the event. Now, all of a sudden, you've just kind of added like that multi-level chess game that they play on Star Trek there. You just completely, ruined it. You're going to screw it up. There's no doubt. You cannot please 100% of the people 100% of the time. You're just going to, and it doesn't matter how much you plan, how much you try to think what's going to happen. What's the worst case scenario? It's something bad is still going to happen that you're unexpected. The key is just to build on it and not do it again next year. But you're still going to continue to screw up. Well,
and that's part of the challenge, though, is to know, both from a standpoint of whoever's organizing the thing, but also the attendee, what is the role that you're going to have? And in some cases, the role can be, and by the way, this is not just for the managed service industry. This is for any industry that is having a trade show, is because this is such a diverse in terms of what are the roles of organizations. And an organization can be a vendor, can be a supplier, can be a consumer, can be any and all those things. And if that's not made relatively clear, and especially to the attendee, then what are they doing there?
The other massive mistake that I see a lot of vendors make, and it goes back to like just knowing your audience, which is just kind of it seems kind of basic, but it is taken for granted. If you have a 25-year-old female that is part of the planning process for an event which is predominantly 55-year-old males, you're going to have a miss, right? Because what they get excited about, what they want to see, what they want to hear is completely different than what the potential audience does. And, I see this all the time, just in selecting something like the keynote. You Kevin, you were heavily involved in the keynotes that we did at DataCon this year. And, for me, it was just trying to find somebody that was relatable to the audience. I don't necessarily care what these people had to say, but I'm not the audience. And even though I'm planning the event and I've got an entire staff planning the event, it's really important that you know your audience, put your audience first and think about them, even though you may not be excited about it. So like, for example, I'm not a huge fan of putting athletes or actors out there, somebody that's necessarily famous. And, you know, I'll use like PAX 8 Beyond is coming up. And I just joined.
Really, it's about how soon is PAX 8 Beyond coming up?
It's in June. It's in June.
It's
but
125 days.
The whole thing is they're like, hey, can you take this over and help us plan this and organize this? And I'm like, great. Who's your keynote speaker? And they're like, Peyton Manning. And I'm like, you know, it's an athlete. And yeah, if you ever get a chance to see Peyton, I don't know if you guys have, he's a really good keynote. But if I'm British MSP that's coming to the United States, do I know or care who this person is? Whereas, you know, you try to find somebody that's kind of universal. And again, it's just that kind of, again, going back to that mindset, put yourself in the shoes of the attendee, put yourself in the shoes of the vendor, and walk it through that way.
So is a strategy for that to try to come up with enough different things? Obviously, keynote's different because that's the keynote. But do you try to come up with things that are going to, so that every factor, every group could have an interesting, so I may not be interested in A, B, or C, but D is really cool. Or do you basically say, no, there are some people who are going to attend who are going to be less engaged?
It's just normal. And the key is, I guess, trying to find something that, or try to find parts of the conference that they can be more engaged in, even though we know they're going to be less interested in other pieces. Mm-hmm. You know, like perhaps it's the keynote speaker, or perhaps it's a track of content that is just not going to be relevant for some people. The other issue that we've got specifically in the MSP space, is, especially these days, is the wide breadth of knowledge as well as size. Like, you know, when we all first started doing these things in the MSP space, we were all kind of like small shops, entrepreneurs, SMBs, all focused on kind of the same goal. But as time's gone on, you know, for example, like Bob, you're focusing a lot on co-managed. So that's a little more interesting than perhaps why you want to build a recurring revenue practice, you know, where you've already kind of done that, mastered that. I don't need to sit through this. So it's like, you know, how do you, again, make sure there's something there for everybody? And lots of different keys to that and aspects of that.
Right. But you also have some of the smaller, like the road shows. And the road shows can be we're going to focus on organizations who haven't developed fully as business, and because they don't have the travel budget. So they're more likely to be able to do something local, in which case then the more experienced MSP in this particular case is not going to enjoy that as much.
No, I agree. But you can take them on that journey, and you can ask for some forgiveness there and focus some time on what's, you know, small, and then we'll move on to medium, and then we'll move on to large, and then just kind of like have different aspects of it. But again, it's very key to make sure that you've got that content for somebody's going to get something out of something every time, right. Even if it's just like, this is the lion's share of what I wanted, but I'm still going to learn something by sitting through this, even though it's not really my core interest or competency.
Yeah. And one of the things I've also seen has been where something happens and they have to come up with something in the last moment. And someone has an idea and say, hey, I'm going to do this. We're going to do this. Everyone's going to love it. Yeah. Not so much.
Terrible.
Because they came up with an idea, or they saw something on Reddit, or they did whatever, and they come up with that type of event. So you have to take a lot of that stuff into account. And
again, it's going to be screw up. Don't do that again, or change it, edit it, and do it differently next time. I mean, we were all at a conference not that long ago in November. We probably saw one of the most cringiest things that we've ever seen before. I was
going to bring up the specifics.
I'm not bringing up any specifics, but I think, you know, universally but you know what? Kudos to them for trying.
They tried it.
And
they tried
as long as they don't do it again, I think everybody will be like, yeah, that was okay. But hey, you tried it. If you did it a second time and it was equally cringy, then we've got some issues.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And I think pretty much everybody in that particular instance actually treated it that way.
Yeah.
You know, so kudos on that side. So that's from an overall industry event planner standpoint. Now, if you're the exhibitor, you can't would you do the same sort of thing where you try to have something from your exhibiting standpoint that is going to appeal to everyone? Or do you focus on who your biggest clients are, or landing the new clients? And I suppose part of it depends on where you are as far as into the market. Are you really trying to get into the market? Are you, have you been there for a while or the like?
It does, and it's a lot of it has got to come down to what your objective is there, right? Is it lead generation? Like, we're brand new, we need to get as many names as we possibly can into the database. That's one angle you can take, where you're just kind of like lots of giveaways, gather lots of business cards, lots of conversations. Is it, we're established, fairly well known, and it's more about retention or targeting specific larger partners that you want to kind of engage with while you're there. So it all depends on kind of what the objective is as to how you're going to actually approach it.
But you need to have one. You need to have that objective.
Oh, you have to have a plan. It's insane about how many organizations, and first of all, when we talk about trade shows or any type of live engagement, the cost per lead is significantly more than it is doing things like a webinar, or I don't know if you're like really cheap and doing things like podcasts out of your office. Like that is, that's kind of the cheaper form of doing things.
For the record, I am not in my office right now.
Okay, sitting in Kevin's office doing this.
Are you fed up with reactive IT providers who take too long to respond, let problems fester, and nickel and dime you for every little thing? Say goodbye to those frustrations by choosing Simplex-IT, home of Amazon's best-selling author and BizTech Twist host Bob Coppage. As Northeast Ohio's friendly neighborhood MSP, Simplex-IT has been providing top-notch managed and co-managed IT services since 2007, supporting hundreds of clients locally and across the United States. With a managed service provider like Simplex-IT, you'll benefit from proactive maintenance, 24/7 monitoring, and streamlined technology that will help you grow your business. Visit simplex-it.com for more information and to start experiencing stress-free IT today.
It's the most expensive form of lead generation. Therefore, you better do it properly, because you're going to run out of money and then people are going to stop doing it. But it is the most effective way of engaging with somebody, is that live interaction.
If you engage.
If you engage, you have to come at it with a plan. And it's amazing to me that how many people just don't come at it with a plan. There's no conversation ahead of time of what the game plan is. So you've got a bunch of players you're now going to throw out on the field, and all you've told them is, hey, just go downfield. But nobody knows what route you're going to run and who the plays for, and just get open and we'll figure it out. That's not the proper way to attack these things. And again, it goes back to what your objectives are, who is actually going, what is the audience that is there, and what do you want to get out of this? What's success look like? What's failure look like? And it's going to be different depending on the event that you actually go to. But it is incredible to me that how many marketing teams, sales teams don't plan these things properly and don't walk in with objectives or how they're going to execute.
Okay, and you could make the same case about any of the resources that are used there. Your giveaways, your tchotchkes, all of that kind of good stuff. And to me, it's one of those where so often I've seen situations where they treat it as a social game, and it's only a social game. So I'm going to get into conversations with people. I'm going to talk to my friends. I'm not going to talk to the strangers and the like. We're
natural introverts. You tend to we're pack animals. You walk into an event, you're going to go and immediately be attracted to the people that you do know. And it's very easy to get stuck with those people. Unfortunately, those people aren't necessarily moving your ball forward. It's the individual you're not talking to. I actually challenge my staff, and I challenge myself to this as well. Go and meet at least 3 people that you've never come across before. Go and find the person that is standing in the corner, not speaking to anybody. Like those are the ones where I can create, and I have created lifelong friendships out of some of those relationships of people that I've just gone out of my way to go and meet. It's uncomfortable. But you'll find that, at the end of the day, more people are willing to talk to you than tell you to go to hell.
Con buddies.
Yep.
Yes, I'll introduce myself, taking the bus from one hotel to the conference center and just say hi to the person next to me. And just start talking and exchanging ideas and all that stuff. And it's like, oh, hey, now we talk all the damn time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've created some of my really, really good friends in this space just as a result of that. Feeling, just feeling like just create a friend. It's pretty easy, actually, much easier in our space than we give it credit for. You just got to be willing to step up and do it.
Well, and I think what you also have to do is you have to be willing to listen, because I think there's a lot of people who, and especially in our industry, I think there's a lot of us who are introverts or we are overly extroverted. And there's almost a switch that goes off that I have to impress people with every word that I say. And I'll be honest, if I get tired at these events because I've got my own issues and all that, I will overcompensate and get too talkative, and I will get too, I've got to say something witty, or I've got to say something whatever. And I think there's a lot of people who are introverted from the standpoint of I don't know how to engage. And this is more from the exhibitor standpoint, or excuse me, from the attendee standpoint than the exhibitor standpoint. But where people will overcompensate for their shyness.
Yeah.
And it's one of those where take it slow and feel free. I think there's more people who would identify with that problem or that challenge than would condemn it. Yeah. And to say, hey, I'm really uncomfortable in these things. I'm sorry if I'm coming across strong, but this is my first time. What do you suggest I do?
Yeah, I think there's some pretty simple things that you can do. Like if you think about the environment that we're in, you've got a bunch of vendors which tend to have sales and marketing folks, which are not IT folks and don't necessarily understand the journey of the MSP or how the MSP ticks. So they tended to be like, if you take a look at sales and marketing folks, they tend to be extroverted, whereas the audience tends to be techs, and they tend to be fairly introverted. So it's really hard where the techs walk in saying, I don't want to be sold to. Meanwhile, that's kind of the job of all the vendors that are actually there. I always kind of take a step back because, yes, I mean, we're all at the end of the day trying to figure out how we do business, how we can do business together. But honestly, I don't want you buying my product or my service unless you're going to make money at it. Just like you don't want to offer your product or service to your ultimate end user unless they are going to benefit from that. That is an unhealthy relationship we all try to get away from. Unfortunately, it's really hard to do at 30 seconds at a booth when you're just trying to grab a bouncy ball. So for me, it's real simple. I want to know who you are and what your business is. I don't want to know who, I watch vendors do it all the time. Hey, RMM, who are you using? Rather than, introduce yourself and ask a little bit about them and their business. And there's one thing that is common, and it's a human trait, is that we all are super comfortable talking about ourselves, meaning ourselves, our job, our family, our town, our whatever. Like there's something there that we're all kind of really comfortable at talking about. And if you just find what that is, then you can start to use that as a way to get to know somebody better and then eventually figure out. There are MSPs that have come to me that I said, I will not sell you my product because you're in a good spot. You're making enough money. You're making an impulse decision here. It's just the wrong thing. And long-term, it's going to be unhealthy. But that's really hard, especially for like a lot of vendors that are just getting started at this. They want to get in there and find somebody that's going to do a demo and sign a contract real quick. Because they've got objectives and quotas and all those types of things. So the benefit of getting to the relationship sale part of this, which is let's get to know each other first. Let's see if we want to dance together or if we can dance together, and then we'll figure it out from there. But you have to have the luxury of time to be able to do that.
There's a lot of vendors I've started talking to. It's a lot of MSPs who have actually just jumped the fence to go into vendor space. So the first thing they usually mention, or one of the first things that they're, hi, my name is whatever, is, hey, I also used to work at an MSP. I used to own an MSP. I used to do something with an MSP. And it's setting that common ground that really does help the conversation, kind of relaxes everyone a little bit. It's like, the pain I went through.
An interesting question for you both. How long does that last? I used to be an MSP. I sold my business and now I'm doing this. How long does that last before you're like, dude, you don't know what it's like being an MSP anymore?
Honestly, I think it's starting to get stale just in and of itself, because there are so many people who are now saying that as that's my entry card, is I used to be an MSP. So I think you've got two things going simultaneously. One is, how long ago? And two is just like everybody else. It's almost like a majority of vendors in this space have their pet MSP or former MSP. And I don't mean that. There's a lot of really, really good ones out there. And then there's a lot of ones who are just become salespeople. And one of the things that I love to ask is what would make a bad client? What would make a bad sale? What would make a bad, under what circumstance would this tool or your service or your goods or whatever not be a good fit?
It's a good question. And it is an important part of that whole relationship here, because I want our relationship to be a positive one. The last thing I want is for my service not to match what your needs are. Therefore, you're going to go to Facebook and Reddit and tell all of your friends and your peer groups that this company is crap. And it's just more so because it was just a bad fit. If you think about it as dating, you might be physically attracted to this person, but then you start talking to them and realizing that their value system is completely different than yours, or their moral system is different than yours, and then all of a sudden you can get over the initial attraction of what it was that brought the two of you together. I think that at the end of the day, and I think, if I say this from a vendor talking to an MSP, but I think an MSP talking to their end user would agree with me on this. At the end of the day, if this relationship isn't going to be profitable, why are we doing it?
Yep.
For me, if I'm looking at an MSP that is just going to call, they're just too small and they're going to suck up any profitability that I've got by calling tech support every day, then that's not a relationship that I want. Right. And I think that that's realistic on your side there, where you're not going to want an end user that is going to be unhappy with your services and tell two friends, or is going to call you every day and just berate your staff because things aren't working or things aren't working the way that they want. And I think that's just kind of where the assessment of, is this relationship a good relationship, needs to go. I don't know about you, but it goes back to the whole firing clients. In my career as a vendor, with 3 different large-ish vendors, 2 of which being in the MSP space, I can tell you I've only ever fired maybe 2 or 3 MSPs. And it's just come down to the fact that I just can't handle working with you anymore. I'm sure you've had more than that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it becomes an issue of, it's the value calculation. And I have my definition as an organization. We have our definition of what is a valuable relationship, and our clients have that same calculation on their part. And it's one of those where, and I have this conversation up front every time we sign somebody up. I say, at every point along this line, I have to be able to look across the table and say, I'm getting value, in this case, monetarily, I'm getting value providing the services, but you have to be able to look across the table and say, I'm getting value in terms of the goods and services they're consuming. And if that ever goes awry by either side, we have a problem and we need to work on fixing that. And there's always going to be ebbs and flows. That's okay. But if it's consistently in favor of one person or the other, it's not going to be a good long-term fix.
It's not. And I think that's where, I take great pride in being a salesperson since the beginning of time. And there's a number of reasons why I've been in sales my entire career. And there's times when you're coming up and people try to make it sound like being in sales is dirty. It's not a good career choice. You're going to lie, cheat, and steal in order to be successful in this space. And then you see all the movies like the Boiler Rooms and the Wolf of Wall Street and the, Glengarry Glen Ross and all those things, where it just perpetuates just this negativity around sales as a career. I've always taken the approach and only ever worked for organizations that give me the ability to develop that relationship, suss it out to see where the value is, because that's the only time you're ever going to be successful long-term, is by developing those relationships and figuring out the mutual benefit of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's get down to some of the don't do's, and along with, because what are some of the don't do's when we go to some of these events, and if there's stories backing that up, what you should not do. So I'll give you one, and this is back in the 90s. There were computers back then. This is at Comdex. And one of the vendors for Comdex, I was taking part, and there was about 200 of us in the room. Comdex was about 200,000 at that point, or something along those lines. put out this shirt and gave everybody a shirt and said, over the next 5 days, every day we'll be out on the Comdex floor and we will select one person wearing this shirt and we'll give them all of our products. Won't that be fun? Won't that be exciting? And everyone's like, yay, wow. And I talked to the woman after, and I said, do you know what you just did? She says, yeah, we think it's going to be really exciting. You just told these people to wear the same shirt for 5 days at a very, very large, very packed conference. And she said, oh, they won't be doing that. Of course. Oh my God, they will. And sure enough, and these were not the best people to be wearing a shirt for 5 days in a row.
There's a reason there's the shower once per 24-hour rule at any conference.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that was one where they had this promotional idea and they literally just came up with it right when they were doing their presentation. And it said it was a nice shirt.
They needed to give away 5 of them. Or change it up.
Absolutely.
Every day, for sure.
So that's one story I've got. So think your promotion plans all the way through.
100%. 100%. For me, I think one of the biggest mistakes that I see is it's I don't know how else to say this other than to say it. It's how you act outside of work hours. There's a big component to the relationship build in our space. I mean, we're all traveling to a venue, to probably a new city. We're all going to be trapped in a hotel together. More than likely, there's going to be alcohol involved. And at that particular point, how are you going to act and react once you've started consuming? And it's amazing how many times where I've had like a super effective salesperson, but then all of a sudden they have a couple of drinks and they just turn into idiots and start saying and doing really, really dumb things. That for me, there's no way you can test for that. I'm sorry, my dog has decided to start barking. There's no way you can test for that. There's no way you can plan for that. It's not like you can take them out during the interview process and get them drunk to see what they're like when they've been drinking.
You probably can't. HR won't like it though.
Unless it's HR who's coming along. So
yeah, I've had that situation where I've had even HR there and whatnot.
But that gets into one of those situations where you think you're witty and charming, but nobody else does.
Correct. Oh yeah, and then you wake up the next day and either don't remember it or think, oh, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Oh yes, that's happened numerous times. You got to be able to hold it together, or you have to know your limits and then be able to pull yourself out of that situation. You have to be able to walk away from those. And not everybody's a good drinker, so just if you can't handle it, then just don't do it or pull yourself out at a certain point. And I know a lot of people that are at that maturity level where they can do that. I think one of the other big things for me too, and this is an interesting debatable one here, is the whole dressing up nonsense, like kind of thing. And I'll reference an event where the organizers of the event always come up every year with a new theme for that year's conference.
Right.
And one of the years was the Wizard of Oz. And a vendor who happened to be a competitor of mine decided that they were going to dress the booth staff up, the sales staff up as a character from the Wizard of Oz. Okay. This is awesome for me because you've got we're selling backup and on average, you're probably looking at about a $20,000 per year solution. And this organization wants to take my clients away from me, but they're going to do it dressed up like the Cowardly Lion. Good luck. Because in my mind, you walk up, like I'm super uncomfortable in that scenario where I've got like a mascot that is trying to sell me something, or I'm trying to have a business conversation with somebody that is in full face makeup and costume. I'm sorry, I'm not switching backup solutions to somebody dressed up like a lion or a princess or something along those lines. It's just in my mind, it's just completely immature. Now, there's a lot of organizations that love the gitchiness. They love the playing around and stuff like that. I just find it immensely immature and not I mean, sure, you might get some low level attention, but we're not going to have a real business conversation.
I think there's a way you can do both if it's not part of the costume. I think that's where, because there's no way you're not going to look like a scarecrow. Whereas if you have a booth that has a Wizard of Oz theme, or you have a giveaway that is that, you could say, let's walk away from that.
I'm fine with
and
that.
let's have that conversation. But I think that's absolutely, I'm not a costume guy either.
No.
No,
especially like as a business transaction. And I think sometimes, we are in the SMB market, and, you can be, and people have gotten a little bit silly in the SMB market. But I think just elevate your game a little bit. We're making serious transactional business. And I just think it deserves a little bit more respect than that.
Well, it's also, you got to know your audience, and that means the hundreds of people that you will be talking to.
Yeah.
And gets back to the original conversations we started with, where not everyone is going to appreciate it or like it. And there's no way that, like, again, focusing on the costume aspect, there's no way you can back that off. It's like, it's there. That's it. And it's similar to the whole concept of keep the conversations apolitical.
Oh, that's a
religion.
Oh my God. And that's one of those where if you do anything even remotely political, by definition, 50% of the people disagree with you.
Yeah.
And so you and I had this situation in Florida where somebody made the casual comment that had to do with one topic, which a lot of people would find very divisive.
Yeah.
And he was being very nonchalant, very natural, very whatever, but he also said something that a lot of people would find offensive.
Yeah.
And it's one of those where it doesn't matter whether you're right, it doesn't matter whether you're being kind, it doesn't matter what, again, I get back to that 50% of your audience are going to disagree.
Yeah.
Significantly.
I was actually going to bring that up. Know when to get on the soapbox and when to get off of it. Yeah. There was a conference I went to during the pandemic, and there's this group of people that absolutely refused to wear a mask, even though it was mandated by the conference. They would not do it. Or if they knew an organizer came on, they would just hold it over the mouth. And the second they walked away, took it back down. And they would get on their soapbox, ranting and raving, these things aren't effective, blah, 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 all the other nonsense and garbage you hear. They eventually were asked to leave because they just didn't know when to get off their soapbox. And like, come on, you got to know when to do that. Like, grow up a little, please.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter which way you lean or what your opinion is. It just shouldn't take place at these things. And again, I think that just goes back to more of the casual setting where people eventually get into that spot. I was just at a conference last week, and I met up with an individual who I am friends with, who I am Facebook friends with, and we have complete opposite views when it comes to things like this. He posts his stuff on Facebook. I don't. But I know where he stands, and it doesn't come up as conversation in that scenario. Yeah. We talk about he's using my product. I use, I'm work with him, and we've known each other forever. There's ways of doing business without that stuff coming up. That can be death, though. If you're trying to sell a product or a service, it can be absolute death. Just by having, maybe a slightly off political view or stand on something else. Right. Yeah. And I don't know, in my mind, it's just better. I grew up with very, very conservative British parents who were like, don't talk about sex, politics, or money in groups. And I've just kind of been successful not doing those things.
Cool. The other situations that we've run into, or that I've seen, is look out for the after hours events. And this is kind of what you were talking about from the drinking and standpoint, but also the fact that the vendor is there, or excuse me, that the event organizer is there to let everybody let loose and do their thing and all of that kind of fun stuff. And there are some people, and again, I'll the hot tub story, I'll let you tell that one.
It's amazing that you and I, sitting around a bar, just talking nonsense, has turned into an actual podcast about this crap. But I appreciate where you take this.
It's what I do.
Okay. So just for context, Kev, you weren't there, but just for context, we were talking about things to do at conferences that would weird everybody else out. And I don't know why we went down this route, but we did. And we just started talking about it. You remember there was one guy there was a group of us who were having this conversation, and one guy was trying to get in, and all of a sudden it was just kind of awkward. Yeah. And I think I said something like, so what's everybody's room number? And it just, that's just like, you immediately want to lose a crowd of people. That's probably a good way to do it. So it's like little things like that. Or after you shake somebody's hand, smell your hand and see, right? There's like, dog loves that one. So there's there's definitely things that you can do that would immediately turn them up. We're always joking that Jerry from ASCII does that. He does the hand smelling thing. Hold on. I'm just going to close my door. Just give me one quick sec. Stop. Anyway. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah, so there was one end of event, we as vendors can stop working ish. There's still MSPs around, so you got to be a little bit careful. But I think we were there for an extra day because there was a golf tournament that was going on after. And we decided to meet down by the pool, and we decided there's an extra large sized hot tub that's there, and we get into this hot tub, and then all of a sudden, a member of an MSP who was also at the show pops up out of the hot tub wearing a pair of goggles. Like he was swimming under the water in the hot tub. And we all just kind of looked around at each other going, well, this is a little bit strange, but he felt they just maintained conversation and then eventually went back under. And we're like,
and again, he did not have a snorkel. I want to be clear.
But he could hold his breath a long time.
Yeah, well,
hold his breath.
Practice,
So yeah, I think it's probably the last time I was in a hot tub. Odd things. I mean, there's been lots of weird things over the years. Just sad to see. Just it's humans. That's all. That's what makes it actually mostly interesting. Is just the human aspect of all this.
Yeah, and when we are honest, when we're honest in terms of what we want to accomplish, so we have that goal and objective of what we're doing, whether it be an exhibitor or an attendee or the like, and we're honest when we're talking with people about the value that we're trying to impart to each other. Then it works out really nicely. But when we just focus on what I want, what's important about me, or we focus on what's the best way I can get what I want from you, that's where it starts going south. Or I want to have a good time and I really don't give a hoot what happens with everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes this is where people are going to go out with the blaze of glory. I don't plan on seeing another one of these again, so I'm going to go out and make sure I go out with a storm. So
absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think that's probably a good place to wrap this up. Rob,
terrible place to wrap up, but
well, it could be worse. It could be like a minute from now. That'd be a lot worse. No, Rob is
didn't bring up the other stories, but that's good.
Well, no, and that's why I'm trying to end this now, so we don't. Yeah.
Sure.
Remember your restraining order, Bob.
Absolutely. The ankle bracelets chafe. They really do. Doesn't matter what kind of socks you're wearing. That's all I'm going to say. Rob, as always, I appreciate it. And I look forward to working with you with PAX 8. And Kevin, yeah.
Tuesday.
Well, thank you guys. It's always good to see you. And yes, I'm glad we can continue to be friends with a new vendor. And yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool.
See you worst case in June.
Will do. Signed up.
Nice. Good. We'll definitely see you there. And right. We're going to be talking a lot about co-manage. So
let me know if I can help.
And then I'll actually make it work.
Yeah. That is pretty much how it works. All right. And to everybody else, thank you for listening. And thank you to Rob Rae of PAX 8, Kevin Dutkiewicz of Simplex-IT, and myself. And remember to like, subscribe, click whatever looks clickable except for the thumbs down thing. And see you soon.